Ink-a-dink, 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 ink-a-dink. Wow.
Okay, yeah, we're going to get started in a couple of minutes, Basil. I just want to make sure that since we don't have the Basil phone today, we need to make sure that we have this that this is connected. Hello? Oh, okay, Basil. It must have been on vibrate. We're going to be starting the show in a couple of minutes, but may I ask who you are? Basil. It's actually the woman who called in last week. Remember the woman that called in? That had taken the letters in Barack Hussein Obama and come up with a couple of very frightening recombinations of letters and words. You do remember that. Okay, we haven't started the show yet, but hold on. Remember she had taken the letters in Barack Hussein Obama and come up with a couple of very frightening, something that our guest seemed to appreciate. She'd come up with a car bomb in USA shake, and also one that had the Arabic leader, the sheikh. Car bomb shake, AA, a couple of A's left over, and I'm not sure what she meant by that, but okay. We're going to start the show in a couple of minutes, but if you have a quick comment or question. Basil, she's okay. I'm going to translate for Basil, for our guest, and for the audience briefly while we're on the phone. Okay, she's saying that in retrospect, in review, she realizes that she was fearful. Now, let me get this translate correctly for you and pass it along correctly for you. Basil, she says that she was, in retrospect, she was completely at odds with reality, and doesn't know why she felt that way, but she feels quite different now. She doesn't look at things. She's not looking under. Can I quote you on that? Okay, she's not looking under rocks for hidden enemies. Okay, so she wasn't able to cope with her unnatural fear until we talked last week. So, okay, we're going to go on with the show now. So thanks for calling in, and maybe we can get you back on during the show. Thanks. Basil, you didn't. Oh. Good evening. Welcome to Basil BuddhaCat Presents. How long have you been doing this to me? Thank you for joining us on Basil BuddhaCat Presents. Tonight we have a new episode, and we'll do another Sunday episode. We have the 7 p.m. tonight episode, and we'll also have a Sunday 10:30 a.m. episode with our old friend Fear. Now, as you may remember from the previous episodes, we talked about fear. We talked about fear of, in some quarters, fear of big government, and in some quarters, fear of large corporations, which is the one that Basil and I get caught up in more often than certainly big government. Although, and we may hear from him later, a surprise caller in to talk about the marriage of big government, large corporations, and perhaps for our Sunday morning show, religion. Okay, but for now, we've got Fear back on, and this is going to be very interesting because our conversation is going to be principally via phone. So, okay, it's blinking. Okay. Thank you for calling Basil BuddhaCat Presents. May I help you? Basil, it's Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House of Representatives, circa 1990 to 1994, Newt Gingrich, current presidential candidate on the Republican Party side. Mr. Gingrich, before you comment, I'd like to get you in on this discussion with Basil and I. about the notion of fear. Now, back in 2008, you and some of the other folks that were in the Republican Party talked at length about things that would happen if Barack Obama became president. You talked about the certainty on your part, certainty that if Barack Hussein Obama became president of the United States, that we would certainly be hit, that Osama bin Laden would certainly come out of hiding, would certainly launch more attacks against the United States, against this, as you put it, and I'm quoting you now because I have it right here, weak administration who wouldn't stand up against the forces of evil and radical Islam, as you put it. Now, there were other folks, obviously, that were talking in somewhat more hushed tones about Mr. Obama being a Muslim, being from another country, and of course those folks are still out there, but their numbers seem to have dwindled somewhat in the face of the truth and of facts. But at any rate, what new? Okay, Basil, I'm going to use this. I know you're not going to like this, but what new cats do you have to pull out of the bag to make us afraid? What new forces? What new thoughts about President Obama do you have to bring out against him this time around? Okay, he says he doesn't appreciate my snarkiness, but I guess I outsnarked him a little bit here. Okay, Mr. Gingrich, we don't have you on air, but I'm gonna tell Basil and the audience what you. I'll describe what you're saying as best I can, and certainly you can correct me. You'll hear me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong with anything I say. Okay, he says that Mr. Gingrich, former Speaker Gingrich, says that certainly the fear of another nation has come up, and maybe we didn't have some of the things that they feared 3 years ago, but there's a new notion that's out in the air, a new notion of the country not of Iraq but of Iran developing a nuclear weapon. Now, as former Speaker Gingrich, first of all, what evidence do you have, if any, that Iran is developing a nuclear weapon? He says he has it on good and reliable sources that Iran is in fact developing a nuclear weapon, and in fact, we'd better act quickly before that happens. Okay, I won't ask you to divulge your sources, but Basil's twitching his whiskers, and Basil. Okay, hold on. Okay. Along with being a devout Christian, and along with being a Buddhist, Basil's come over to my side in terms of nationality, or so he says, and he's got a little bit of the Irish brogue in him, we'll say. But Basil says that all this talk about what might be is just a bunch of malarkey, he says. Thank you, Basil. Okay, now Speaker Gingrich, I mean, I'm not sure if your sources, my sources, your facts, my facts, I'm not sure if they're going to jibe at all, but certainly there's no doubt that that America is not concerned about other nations having nuclear weapons. Okay, certainly our ally in the Middle East, Israel, has, I believe, something to the tune of about 300 nuclear weapons stockpiled to use. Do you really believe that that with our defense systems that are set up, if Iran would be able to use a weapon against Israel, against the United States, against anyone, without being caught, stopped, and obliterated? Is it necessary, do you think, to consider preventative? I know you're against preventative medicine because you're obviously opposed to the to any kind of health care that contains a preventative medicine, a preventive medical guarantee for all Americans. But do you really believe that this preventative notion is necessary when you talk about Iran? Okay. He's saying, in this case, preventative medicine is the best medicine. Okay. Basil, comment? Well, first of all, let's give our guest Fear a chance to comment. Fear's mic'd up this time, so Fear has an opportunity to respond. Fear, what say ye? Fear is quiet. Okay. Speaker Gingrich, your old pal Fear is not speaking up, so we'll just have to continue the conversation with you. But first of all, Basil has something to say. We'll get back with you in a few minutes. Thanks. Okay, Basil? Basil said, okay. And now, as you recall, I have to translate for Basil because Basil does not speak English. Basil speaks his own particular variety of Cantonese because now Basil, when he developed his Facebook page with my help, and that's Basil BuddhaCat on Facebook, Basil BuddhaCat, Basil learned and devised his own brand of Cantonese, which is not the principal Chinese dialect. It's not the dialect. It's not the Chinese that's the official language of the Chinese Communist Party or the Chinese government, but it's more of a rural, more agrarian language. Basil learned to speak not Cantonese but Cantonese, and as it were, I had to learn to speak it in order to translate for him, and I did, and I do the best I can. Sometimes Basil is a little quick with his explanations, and I have to double check with him. But at any rate, so Basil, go ahead. Basil's saying that former Speaker Gingrich and he's going to enumerate off the other candidates that we've had on our show that are some of which are not candidates anymore. We started with Michelle Bachmann. We've had Rick Santorum on for 2 shows, and of course he's still a candidate and perhaps the pronounced candidate on the Republican side now. We've had Newt Gingrich on, and Mr. Gingrich has seemed to slide in the polls quite a bit, and in the latest caucuses and primaries, Mr. Gingrich has done very poorly. We also had on Ron Paul, who's continuing to hold his own. He's between 10 and 15% everywhere, and that seems to be his threshold of strength. But certainly has done better than a lot of candidates in some of these primaries so far. And certainly, if not a top-tier candidate, he's certainly a very potent second-tier candidate, and he's been listened to because they can't not listen to him. And also we've also had Sarah Palin on for a couple of shows, and not being a candidate, but certainly not having committed to any of the other candidates yet. It's important to note that she's still out there. So okay, go continue, Basil. Okay, Basil's saying that all of these candidates still are wielding that ugly hammer known as fear, and it rankles him. And as he says this, of course, you'll note the ears twitch, the whiskers twitch. He's twitching all over now. But Basil sees them as being nothing more than fear mongers. That in fact, back in 2008, they made incredible numbers of claims of what would happen if this candidate named Barack Hussein Obama became president. That horrible things would happen to America, and they kind of slid off that bandwagon as Osama bin Laden was killed. How other members of Al Qaeda have been killed. How America has been safe for the first 3 years, which is in fact quite an improvement over not only the previous administration, George W. Bush, where we were struck in the first year, but also in the Clinton administration, where we were struck by Al-Qaeda in the first year. So Basil's okay. He's looking. He's grasping for words, and I'm grasping for the ability to hear, to listen, and to translate for him. Okay, he's saying that new election, basically same old malarkey. They're making claims that the best way they can back up those claims about economic problems in the United States is by blocking everything that President Obama has suggested, or at least attempting to block everything he's put into place to improve the economy. And it appears like, that's just maybe a little bit of a stretch, Basil, but I'll let you go. Go ahead with it. Basil's saying that it appears like everything that they've done has been an attempt to make America fail economically in order to create a climate of a poor economy so that they can blame their imposed failure on America, to blame that on President Obama. Okay. Oh, blinking again. Basil BuddhaCat presents. Okay, Basil, it's Sarah Palin. Okay, former governor of Alaska, Sarah Palin. She says, next time you're outside on the way home from the show, you might want to look up in the air from the car window, and if you see any helicopters, you might want to hide under the seat. Basil's ears are not flickering. His whiskers aren't twitching, Governor Palin, but he's letting out a very subdued but very very clear belly laugh. And okay, hold on. Basil's saying that if, in fact, if he ever happens to meet up with you, your helicopter and any of those wolves, whether you've slaughtered them off yet or not, Basil's going to tie a couple of his whiskers behind his ear and... Okay, I have to let you know that Basil's become a bit of an Irishman in recent times, recent days. He's going to take a shillelagh to you, he says. And you're going to wish you would never run into Basil or his shillelagh. In fact, he might even arm the wolves. He might even get them weapons, those of them that are still alive, and give them an opportunity to have a little target practice at your expense. Hello? Okay, she's... Apparently we don't have a connection with former Governor Palin. But anything you'd like to add to the conversation, Fear? No. Well, we got you a microphone. We've got you mic'd up. So feel free to join in any time. No remarks. Okay. Oh, lines let up again. Hello, Basil BuddhaCat presents. Okay, it's Congressman Ron Paul. Yes, Congressman Paul. We've got you on the line. You're not live on air, so I'm going to have to translate for you. We're going to have to advise Basil, let him know what your remarks are, and also let the audience know. And then you can certainly feel free to correct me if I err in any way on what you're saying. Okay, go ahead. Congressman Paul is saying that he, in fact, may be still, certainly in his eyes, and certainly in the eyes of his supporters, is the best candidate in an election, not just against President Obama, but against in any election, because the rising tide of libertarianism is sweeping America. Now, Congressman Paul, we hadn't gotten a chance to talk about there's a lot. We'll call it fear for the sake of discussion, but you talk a lot about big government, how as government grows, you claim that, and probably with some degree of accuracy, as government grows, freedoms do tend to shrink a tiny bit. You'll say more than I will, but I'll grant you that the big government can be a problem. And I'm going to hold up the graphic which Basil did for us for the show last week. Big government. Okay, now my question to you. I saw you. Basil sent me as an emissary up to New Hampshire on the Sunday afternoon, right before the primary in New Hampshire, and I went there, and Basil wasn't able to accompany me, but I was able to get right up close because of my fake press credentials, and got some shots of you, and was able to listen in, and I well noted to Basil when he and I discussed that your son Rand Paul was there with you, and it seemed to me that since your son Rand Paul was there with you, you took a little bit different tack in your discussion with the audience that was there, and it was in fact a very impressive audience. You had the room was filled up. It's a very big conference room there, filled up. You had other rooms where people were watching you on your remarks on closed circuit television. Certainly, you had a lot to say, but it seemed to me that your remarks were sounded actually to be a little bit more big government in their own right than you talked about government being able to take care of okay. We won't go there, but Basil and I discussed it afterwards, and it seemed to us in retrospect that a lot of your remarks were tailored for the fact that your son Rand Paul was there, and didn't sound quite as libertarian in tone as they had and have since been. Okay, now. Did you want to make a remark about fear? Okay, he's saying that we have a lot to be fearful of, and in fact, it's most of that is big government. Now, Congressman Paul, we've had discussions here also about large corporations and how, in fact, they seem to have infiltrated. Very quickly after the Citizens United case, which came before the Supreme Court in January of 2010, it seems to have been a large intrusion of big government, not just into the political process with these super PACs, including the one that you have, but a larger infiltration into government. And as Basil well noted, because I brought him back a picture from an event I went to, that show the American flag, and in each of the 50 stars of the American flag, there was stitched in a corporation. And I'm guessing that the meaning behind that, the implication behind that, was that at some point we're not even going to have a government anymore. Well, we will have, in place of the government, in place of individual states, we'll have corporate influence and running. Do you have a problem with weigh in, if you will, on the notion that big government can be just as dangerous as large corporations can be just as dangerous as big government if they're allowed to become too powerful and allowed to hold more sway than individual American voices. Okay, he says he understands that, and he agrees to a large extent with it, but he believes that it's actually big government allowing in large corporations that have come to. He lays the blame at the feet of big government for this happening, and now Congressman Paul. Could we amongst us agree to lay some of that blame at the feet of large corporations? He's saying small degree, but not much at this point. Okay, thanks for calling in. We're going to continue our discussion. Okay, well, we wait for another. Basil, you've said some really good, really complimentary things about Congressman Paul, specifically in terms of his opposition to. Oh, it's blinking. Hold on. Basil BuddhaCat presents. Please hold 1 minute. We'll be right with you. We found a lot of common ground with Ron Paul, with Congressman Paul, about government intervention in and government in our country having military bases literally all over the world, in so many countries, so many large military bases, and the fact that that's so 1950ish. And even back then, I think it's safe to say, and I think, perhaps your favorite president on your list of favorite presidents, which also include Teddy Roosevelt and also include Abraham Lincoln, your perhaps president of presidents, Dwight Eisenhower, was concerned about the intrusiveness of military contractors into government and causing America to be overly involved in doing things that corporations. Yeah, hold 1 second. So we'll be with you again in a second. Hold on, just bear with us. Basil is very much in agreement with that. He thinks Congressman Paul is definitely on the right track and has been his entire career with that. But what we're going to have to do now is we're going to have you call back on the next show. May I identify you? Okay. Yep. It's Rick Santorum, former Senator Rick Santorum. Okay, former Senator Santorum. We're going to get back. We're going to do our Sunday morning show, and that's actually probably where you best belong in terms of the conversation, because we usually talk about more things of more of a religious nature on the Sunday morning show. Okay, thanks. We'll get back with you on Sunday morning. Thanks. Okay, this has been Basil BuddhaCat Presents. I'm David Stevenson, Basil's co-host and interpreter. Center slot, Basil BuddhaCat, and a very reticent, very quiet Fear with us this evening. And maybe we can spark a little conversation with Fear on our Sunday morning show. Thanks. Good night.
They say they'd rob your grandma blind on Wall Street, fritter her away her Medicare on Wall Street. And Pharma Oil and their pet fox don't care if she lives in a box, so long as they wear platinum jocks on Wall Street, Meow.